In Black Clover, Asta was tasked with saving the world from the manifestation of the King of Devils, Lucifero. And thanks to his contract with his devil, he's able to overcome that threat. Upon defeating the Devil King, Asta ranks up to the level of a vice captain, getting closer and closer to his goal of becoming the Wizard King. But what if another king stood in his way? The King of Curses from Jujutus Kaisen, Ryomen Sukuna. Would Asta's strength and anti-magic be enough to defeat the greatest sorcerer in history with his World Slash technique that can bisect the world itself? Now, I first want to start off with talking about what I'll be using as the strongest version of Sukuna, an even stronger one than we saw in the manga. That would be a version of this Sukuna at full strength and stamina, but he still has the use of the Tenjata's technique, and Maharaga is still alive. Now, the most talked about thing in this versus battle is going to be whether or not anti-magic works on cursed energy. The most common response I see is from Jujutsu Kaisen fans, and that is that anti-magic only works on magic, nothing else. Which I often find pretty funny because then, in the same vein, these people will say that Jujutsu Kaisen hacks like domain amplification or domain expansion would work on characters in Black Clover that don't have cursed energy, despite them verbatim needing cursed energy to work in the series, at least for the most part. I will be using the idea of verse equalization here, so mana or negative mana from Black Clover would equalize to cursed energy. This means Asta can nullify cursed energy, and if Sukuna were fighting characters with mana, his techniques would work on them. But I don't even think you would really need to equalize the systems anyways. Asta can negate negative mana. Negative mana exists in an entirely different dimension from the living world of Black Clover, that is Hell. It is a power system derived from negative emotions, which is the same way that cursed energy is formed. Sorcery just literally means magic, and sorcery exists in Black Clover if you want to go by names, which isn't the best way, but people often do that. But if you're one of those people that doesn't like to do verse equalization, I will do a section of the video where I discuss the battle if Asta's anti-magic does not work on cursed energy. Would he get destroyed? Well, wait and see. When it comes to the power of these two characters, I think it's typically known that most people would agree that Asta is stronger. The battle just comes down to Sukuna's hacks as well as his fighting ability and regeneration with RCT, and that is pretty much true. In order to get Sukuna anywhere close to Asta, you'd have to essentially highball him and say that he scales above a suicidal explosion from Yuki when she transformed herself into a black hole that was stated to destroy the planet. You would then have to lowball Asta and just disregard any of the concrete universal scaling that he has and go with the plethora of the planetary scaling, like defeating Lucifero, who has multiple planetary statements, and scales above characters who can create moons, or even if you look at Demon Licht, he could cover the entire planet in clouds within just a few seconds. That's a small planetary to moon level feat, and even higher if you go by the idea that the Black Clover world is bigger than Earth. And that was hundreds of chapters ago. Asta scales well above that in his base form, meaning that a highball Sukuna and a lowball Asta still gives the magicless brat an advantage of being at least many times more powerful than Sukuna. No matter which way you scale it, Asta is going to be stronger than Sukuna if you're being any resemblance of fair. And I don't think that should be controversial to anyone who actually knows the scaling of both series. Whereas speed has become a bit more debatable in the power scaling community, but that's mainly because of an outlier that just recently happened in the Black Clover manga. Apparently, Asta is slower than Light now because Yami struggled against Morgan, who was using light speed attacks. I already debunked this argument in this video, but I'll briefly explain. Yami literally never struggles with the speed of these stated light speed attacks, and he even moves faster than them on panel. Not only that, but this would not debunk Asta's speed, as he has feats of scaling to or even above Demon God Yami, even when Asta is just in his base form. He still has Union and Zeden to stack on top of it. This would not debunk any of Asta's scaling, just Yami, if it even worked, which it doesn't. But arguing that Yami is slower than Light breaks established narrative scaling, as it is shown in the manga and confirmed in the databook that Yuno was faster than both Patri and Raya, who as elves were more powerful than early versions of themselves that were blatantly stated to already be light speed. Are we really going to believe that Yuno just didn't get any faster 200 chapters after this when he fights Lucius? Actually, you have to argue that Yuno got slower over the course of Black Clover. Or what about Lucifero? He was faster than Yuno, and Dark Elf Patri was faster than Light canonically. But Nozel could handle Dark Elf Patri's speed, yet got blitzed by Lucifero. It's also stated within the series that increasing magic power increases your speed, and these light magic users that were stated to be light speed had their magic power increased. So it actually breaks far more of the narrative to think Asta and Yami are barely light speed, rather than that they're many times faster than that. There's this calculation right here, which has base Yuno at hundreds of times the speed of the light. There's this calculation here, which put Yami in the time skip, which is way slower than current Asta, at hundreds of millions of times the speed of light. And these same outlier arguments can be made for Sukuna, as he could barely avoid Yuji's piercing blood in chapter 256, which is stated to be a speed of sound attack. That's how consistent logic would work, but honestly, Sukuna should be FTL for dodging Kashimo's electromagnetic waves, and if we give them both fair speed scaling, both are faster than light, but Asta much more so. Easily hundreds of times faster than Sukuna in just his base form. And it's really way more than that. Okay, but it doesn't necessarily give Asta the automatic victory just because he's stronger and faster. Sukuna has domain expansions, he can heal himself with RCT, and he can summon the 10 shadows, including the most powerful one, Maharaga, who has the potential of adapting to anti-magic. To top it off, the World Slash allows him to cut through the fabric of reality itself, cutting through space, and this is how he defeated the greatest sorcerer of today. Okay, so let's go through all of these scenarios. Say, Sukuna takes Asta seriously by activating his Malevolent Shrine domain expansion right from the jump. This gives him a range of 200 meters where he can attack from anywhere, allowing him to effectively spam his slashing attacks of Dismantle and Cleave. Now, if only Asta had ever faced a character that could spam an ungodly amount of slashes, that would be hard to perceive. Oh wait, he actually did go against a character that did that, when he faced off against the likes of Paladin Damnatio. His atmosphere magic allowed him to attack from a range and slice open his opponents with invisible slashes from every direction. Keep in mind that this is a character with far more power than Sukuna, as he actually believed he could defeat Asta, even though he knew that Asta was stronger than Lucifero, as he defeated Lucifero. When Damnatio sends his attacks at Asta, he's able to surround himself in a wave of anti-magic, completely nullifying all the slashes. This would be comparable to Gojo's Falling Blossom Emotion, which uses cursed energy to fight back against the sure hits. Considering that Asta's anti-magic energy packs a higher potency than Gojo's cursed energy, and is an energy with the purpose to nullify, it should nullify all of Sukuna's slashes from his domain expansion. Asta does have varying degrees of anti-magic protection. The best is his Devil Union, but even in his base anti-magic should be enough, as he always has anti-magic around him, especially when he uses his anti-mana skin. But remember, just because we don't see anti-magic doesn't mean it's not there. Anti-magic can be invisible to the naked eye, and you can argue that Asta would just be physically strong enough to not even need anti-magic to go against the domain expansion, as there is a point in time where Gojo actually stops using reverse curse technique and is taking up a bunch of these sure hits, and while they are damaging him, they are not actually doing that much damage. They are not killing Gojo. Again, Asta is much stronger and more durable than Gojo, which means Asta is probably going to be waltzing right through a Malevolent Shrine. Now, this is probably the question that everybody has been waiting for, and that is, can Asta actually counter World Slash? This is a new and improved version of Dismantle that Sukuna can level up with either a Binding Vow or a chant that attacks space itself. We can actually look at similar attacks in Black Clover and see how Asta fares against those. And, well, he's already negated attacks like this before when he faced off against the Longris, whose attacks are stated to erase space, and in the data book is stated to carve out the universe itself. A pretty weak version of Asta's anti-magic was able to easily erase this spatial erasure magic. This is Asta in like chapter 129 with just his regular black form. The anti-magic in his current base form is many levels above this, so either Asta negates the slash directly with his own anti-magic, or he just tanks it. Also, World Slash is dodgeable, so even if you don't want to say that Asta can nullify it, he would be able to easily get out of the way, as characters much slower than him have been able to dodge it. And there are alternative measures for Asta to counter the World Slash. Causality Break allows him to affect the causality of magic. He has done this before to nullify poison, and then actually remove the physical effects of said poison from causality. He's even done this with physical wounds from the atmosphere magic as well. Basically what he does is with his Demon Destroyer sword, he nullifies magic, and that actually destroys its effect as well. We see him do this both against Lucius and the Devil Twins. Both times it basically shuts off their magic power, thus removing their fire and ice from causality. Meaning that if Asta does the causality break on Sukuna, it would actually nullify his cursed energy, and thus remove the World Slash from causality, making so that it never actually existed. Oh yeah, and there's no reason that he would not be able to do this to Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine either, as Asta has even actually used even lesser versions of his anti-magic to nullify mana zones from characters much stronger than Sukuna. Mana zones being a technique where a territory is made where they control said space and the mana within it, letting their attacks attack from any direction, which is similar to a domain expansion, though it is different. The vice captain of the Black Bulls, Noct, created a mana zone in his fight with Asta, who with a single slash nullified the spatial territory. I can also mention that even when two characters merge their mana zone together at full power, Asta and his Devil Union, just by existing within it, is nullifying that space, which would actually show that also just by existing in his union form, it's basically Asta's own symbol domain or domain amplification on steroids, meaning that it is likely that none of Sukuna's sure hits would even reach his anti-magic armor, as it would be nullified before that, and there would be nothing to hit. And don't forget that if Asta destroys the Malevolent Shrine domain, then Sukuna would not be able to use any of his cursed techniques at least for a brief period of time, before recharging it directly with reverse curse technique. This begs the question, can Sukuna's domain amplification or a simple domain work on Asta's anti-magic? Well, if you look into Black Clover, we can see that Asta has already resisted magic-based power nullification. Absolute Space would be a decent example to compare. It is a form of spatial magic that is power nullification, as it basically takes control or shuts off the power of anybody in that space. An even stronger version of it was thought to be worthless on Asta, which I find important because these anti-domain techniques, these characters are using a form of spatial manipulation, and that bridges a similarity what Asta's already resisted before. Julius's Time Stop, which surrounds people in a time orb and shuts off their power of anybody inside of it, well, Lucius used a stronger version of it on Asta and it didn't work. Damnatio Scale Magic is a form of power nullification, and he thinks it's worthless on Asta. I also don't think that simple domains would be useful at all, as simple domains only nullify sure hits. Though it is stated that a simple domain does increase your power and it weakens the curse energy of others, but even if it could weaken anti-magic, it likely wouldn't be enough. As for domain amplification, it does nullify curse techniques, but not curse energy, which means that even if we want to grant that it would work on Asta's anti-magic, it would only work on his anti-magic abilities, not raw anti-magic energy. Black Divider, Black Slash, maybe even Causality Break are essentially anti-magic spells, the equivalent to a curse technique. If he were to channel anti-energy into his fists, that would not be cancelled out by domain amplification, or just launching out anti-magic with a Zetan Punch. Amplification would not nullify that because it's not a curse technique. It's not the equivalent of a curse technique. It is raw anti-magic energy. We have to remember that anti-energy is more like the fuel of Asta's power, but he's actually using a sword grimoire. But as I said, it likely just doesn't matter. Power nullification just does not work on anti-magic. You might think that Sukuna can just outlast Asta because he has reverse curse technique which allows him to heal himself. And he is stated to have stamina that is a rival to Gojo's, and his is nearly infinite. And so you'd think he'd just constantly re-heal until Asta's out of stamina and then defeat Asta when he has no power. Unfortunately for Sukuna, Asta already has a counter to this as well, as one of the effects of anti-magic is regeneration negation. That's what Asta used his true level of anti-magic. He launched a slash on Dante that Dante could not regenerate from. And we actually see that his body magic can completely heal him when he gets vaporized by Yami's black holes. Dante's regeneration is so potent that even Jack's adapted slashes could not negate his regeneration, even though he could negate Fauna's regeneration back in the Elf arc. Not even Lucius clones, who have the magic type of all of the Dark Triad, can regenerate from a fraction of Asta's current anti-magic power. Effectively, whatever wound Asta puts on Sukuna with anti-magic, reverse curse technique is not going to be able to recover from it. But even if you think RCT would still work, Asta can still use Causality Break to either shut off his curse energy so he could not use RCT, or even possibly reverse its causality. I think I've shown that Sukuna's own curse technique cannot stand up to the flaw of the world, so you need to lean on the curse technique belonging to a younger teenager, the 10 Shadows technique. But really, we all know what matters about the 10 Shadows, and that is the Divine General, Maharaga. Can the Shikigami adapt to the phenomena of anti-magic? Well, this one is actually harder to answer than I thought, because it actually depends on how exactly Maharaga's adaptation works. If the adaptation is through his curse energy, then this is something that might not work against anti-magic. But if his adaptation is actually his physical biology, then it might. But there's a massive hint that can help us figure that out. Shikigami cannot be seen by non-sorcerers, and that is because non-sorcerers cannot see curse energy, or curse spirits, because they are made of curse energy. This then means that Shikigami are also constructs of curse energy, putting Maharaga as a similar type of creature to the elemental spirits who are comprised entirely of mana, which makes me believe that not only would Maharaga not be able to regenerate because of Asta's layered regeneration negation, but the anti-magic would also significantly hamper his adaptation. This brings up a question that I probably should have answered earlier. How is Asta to fight Sukuna or Maharaga if he cannot see their techniques or even Maharaga at all? Well, that's never stopped Asta in his own series. It is stated early on that Asta cannot see mana, but he actually can see them because of his ki. So he doesn't see them with his eyes, he sees them with his ki. He sees how they affect the world around him, which gives him a similar ability to how Maki sees cursed spirits. Remember, Asta can even see Gildre with ki, even though he is completely invisible. But let's say that Maharaga fully adapts to Asta. Is it over for the Flaw of the world? We know that if the curse technique gets cancelled or nullified, then it actually invalidates Maharaga and his adaptation, which means that if Asta does Causality Break on Sukuna's power, it would actually affect Causality so that Maharaga was never actually summoned, and likely revert all of his adaptation. Also, if Maharaga adapts to anti-magic, Asta can revert to brute strength, as even without anti-magic, he scales above all of JJK. A weirdly popular interpretation of this battle has Asta losing to Sukuna by trying to use Talk no Jutsu, and then Sukuna would take him out while he's off guard. But Asta, with his ki sensing, can sense the emotions and intentions of others. He would be able to sense that Sukuna is not someone worth attempting to reason with. People will say Mahoraga has infinite attack potency because he countered infinite pressure of a true sphere. But that was with the power nullification from his blade that he doesn't scale to, and was something he already adapted to. And even if this scaling is granted in Maharaga's infinite power, well, check out this video where I show the plethora of evidence that Asta's own power is infinite. And this leads to the final talking point of the video that I mentioned I would talk about earlier. What if anti-magic could not nullify curse energy? This is where Sukuna gets more win conditions. Asta could not nullify World Slash, he cannot protect himself from sure hits by nullifying them, and he cannot nullify Mahoraga or his adaptations. And if Sukuna is ever damaged by Asta, he can just use reverse curse technique, and in this scenario, Asta cannot nullify it, basically giving every benefit of the doubt to Sukuna while removing Asta's main power as a character. But in this scenario, Asta is still at least hundreds of times faster and stronger than Sukuna. He should be able to withstand the sure hits from Sukuna, as again, they couldn't kill a much less durable Gojo even when he was not using RCT. So in this scenario, I still don't believe Malevolent Shrine is enough to take down Asta. This leads to World Slash, which again is a spell that he can actually see and be dodged, as we saw Maki do that. Asta is many times faster than her. There's no reason why he could not actually dodge it. Asta's sensory abilities are so good that even when he is trapped inside of a space with no light and a spell that blocks out the sensing of life energy so he cannot see ki, he still is able to see and know where Noct was within that space. He's able to turn around and parry light speed attacks early in the series with his eyes closed. Oh, and when it comes to skill, I think Asta can more than hold his own. Not to say he's more skilled than Sukuna, but he's learned from several master swordsmen. He has the ability to copy magic with his own movements. And when he fought Kyoto, a swordsman who had dance magic, Asta could copy his fighting style, essentially copying one of his spells in just one page of the story. And even if Asta cannot nullify or resist Maharaga's adaptation, we do see that if somebody is far stronger and faster than him, he can still lose, like when 15-finger Sukuna dominated him. Once Sukuna actually went serious, he defeated him without difficulty. And even if Mahoraga does adapt, Asta can be so much faster than him that if he just focuses on Sukuna, he would defeat Sukuna, and defeating Sukuna would then mean Mahoraga is also defeated. Because while Sukuna can use RCT, he's not going to be able to use it fast enough. And Asta can kill him, because remember, RCT is not immortality, you still have to be alive to use it. Because he would be wearing him down, and he'd be forced to activate Domain Expansion over and over again, and he could destroy that with raw power, like we've seen other characters do. But Asta also has one more tool in his repertoire, that's Infinity Slash. Infinity Slash is Asta's own copied version of Yami's Dimension Slash. There is debate of whether or not it cuts through dimensions like Yami's, but I think there's actually a lot of evidence that it does. I mean, there's just the fact that we've seen him copy abilities from other characters, and this is him using Yami's sword. And in light novel, we know that when characters use items and use it with their magic, their life energy, their magic, their soul gets imbued into it over time. They can even turn regular items into talking, living items. So if he has Yami's sword, why is it that crazy that he couldn't use similar abilities? The naming conventions are there. There's Infinity Slash and Infinity Slash Equinox, and there's Dimension Slash and Dimension Slash Equinox. But we also actually see Infinite Slash cut through space. Remember, it destroyed Noct's Monozone. Monozone is taking control of an already existing physical space and making that your own spatial territory. But that means that this is physical space, not magical space. This is further supported by Bell's description of Yuno's Monozone. And remember, Asta destroyed Monozone, so he has destroyed physical space with Infinite Slash. You could try and argue that he's destroying the mana of the Monozone, but that's not really what's stated. Plus, we've already seen anti-magic work on physical space before, as he pierced holes through Dante's warp space, which is physical space warped by his gravity. So with Infinite Slash being able to cut space, and Asta being stronger than Sukuna, it would be an attack that could likely not only counter Sukuna's World Slash, but also land a death blow, and would likely overwhelm Mahoraga as well. So yeah, I think Asta is like the perfect counter to Sukuna, and also pretty much Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole. Just think about what Asta is. He is a much stronger, much faster Toji with much better Inverted Spear of Heaven. And think about it like this, he has Inverted Spear of Heaven energy around him. So it's actually crazy, and it's also a completely different energy, which gives him more advantages. Yeah, he's literally just Toji on steroids with better anti-magic or better power nullification. So that's my thoughts. I probably won't be doing a Black Clover versus JJK video for a while. I had this one like scripted almost a year ago, and yeah, I just thought I'd finally upload it. But that's my thoughts. I think Asta absolutely slams. But let me know your thoughts down below, guys. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. You can join my Discord and follow me on Twitter, both linked in the description. Hope you guys all have an amazing day. Peace out.